From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers, home of the best-selling truck 41 years straight, and the 2018 Nissan Titan, backed by America's best limited truck warranty.
It's Monday, and we're happy to have you with us once again for another Black and Gold Review Show alongside Saints Hall of Fame running back Deuce McAllister and All-Region Chris Hagan. I'm simply all city.
He's making stats up right now.
I'm Juan Kincaid. How are you guys feeling about the Saints after the first 2 weeks, first two preseason games?
I feel okay. I mean, the biggest thing that when you think about preseason is you want to avoid injuries. Now, they have had some injuries, but no major injuries to any of the key starters.
Yeah.
You know, we know Ricky Jefferson is out with ACL, but no major injuries to key starters, so I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, look, you know, for the Saints keeping three of the better players in the league, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Cameron Jordan off the field, they look pretty good at times. They did what they needed to do for the personnel they had in the game, so I don't think there's anything that really scares me right now, certainly.
With Drew Brees not on the field, that means somebody had to play quarterback, and that gets us right into our playbook with play number one, all downhill, as in Taysom Hill, a nightmare of a performance for him in game number two after looking pretty good in game one.
Well, he was up and down performance. Obviously, he was able to hit some throws, but the main thing that you think about when you go back and you look at that film is just the misses, the things that he missed, whether it was the interceptions, whether it was the fumbles. That's something that he has to get cleaned up.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to finish those drives. I think they were all, or at least most of them, were impressive enough with completing passes and keeping the ball moving and running the offense and even using his arm a little bit more than his legs, not necessarily pulling it down and running as much as he did in Jacksonville, but he wasn't able to finish. I think his confidence was shaken after that first drop by Cameron Meredith that led to an interception, and like it says, all downhill from there.
Do you worry about how he bounces back from this?
No, I don't worry about it. I think that they'll get him some easy throws. I think that they'll get him to doing something that he's comfortable doing, rolling out, some read option type deal. So I think he can bounce back from this.
Let's get you back into the playbook for play number two. Running backs run amok. Chris, Jonathan Williams, Boston Scott, Terrence West. They're showing that losing Mark Ingram in the first four games may not be such a bad thing after all.
And I'm especially impressed by Jonathan Williams, and hearing Mark Ingram talk about it over the weekend, I think he hit the nail on the head. Jonathan Williams, his confidence is showing. I think what he was able to do in Jacksonville, it kind of showed himself what he was capable of, and he got those first team reps and delivered with it against Arizona, and he had some hard running. It was hard to tell the difference between him and Ingram at times.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Slow down. Slow down. They are going to miss Mark Ingram. It's going to take two guys to make up for the production that he gives you as far as a running back is concerned. They can do some different things scheme-wise that will help them, but from protection to his ability to be able to create in the open field, they're going to miss those things. And I think the other guys are serviceable and they can help, but they're going to miss him in the first four games.
And Mark's looked really good in these first two preseason games. And granted, the offensive line has looked really stellar in these first two games as well.
We are seeing angry Mark very early. Yeah. And so normally it's when he has a bad turnover or something, you know, maybe not necessarily a benching, but maybe not the touches that he would normally get. He runs angry. We're getting angry Mark in preseason.
We'd like him to bottle this for week number 5. Back in the playbook, play number 3. Defense peaks early. Back-to-back 3-and-outs to start the game. Then the next 3 possessions, they give up 17 points. So the defense is not quite there where you want them to be, but they're showing signs.
They're showing signs, and you want them to be able to sustain those 3-and-outs, to be able to get off the field and not really hurt yourself. I thought that they did a better job of wrapping up and coming up and game tackling. That's something that they're going to have to continue to do. But the one thing that you kind of see, or you saw with those quarterbacks, they had too much time. And so you've got to be able to get pressure on the quarterbacks regardless as who is in the game.
And you hope that with Cam Jordan obviously being on the field in the regular season, some of that pressure does start to come, but kind of like Deuce alluded to, I think one thing they did do well was they played well against an elite running back like David Johnson. We saw he was able to make some nice runs, and he had that touchdown. But for the most part, swarming to the ball and not letting him get into a rhythm, they did a really good job.
If there is a concern, the touchdown he had was a 9-yard push inside the 10-yard line, and they worked on goal line pretty much all of last week. Didn't see it on that one play. Play number 4, special teams, the returns, special returns right now. Brandon Tate has been playing very well. And for the first time, I think, since I've been here in 01, I heard Sean Payton basically saying, this guy has made the team, as in Tate. He's shown to be a real asset on special teams.
Yeah, I think you have to, put him in that that category of guys who are locking down their spot when you look at what he was able to do. And, you know, Peyton's talked about it over and over. Field position off of special teams has been something they haven't really had the last couple of seasons, even as good as they were last year. And that's only an even bigger boost, obviously, when you can start a drive at the 40 instead of the 20. And if Tate gives you that, he's got to be your guy. He's got to have a spot.
It's not just Tate, it's also Scott as well.
And one of the things last year, when you look at that number, I think it's diluted really because of the kickoff return that Kamara had against Tampa Bay, you know, to be able to go to 106. Outside of that, field position, particularly starting on kickoffs, if it wasn't a touchback, you know, it was hard to come by. I think the one thing that Sean really likes is the comfort level that Brendan Tate gives you on punts, as well as, you know, I know he can be a dangerous returner as far as kickoffs are concerned, kickoff returns, but the comfort level that he gives you on punt, and I think Tommy Lee has gotten better at it, but I think there's just a comfort level that he gives you as far as to be able to fair catch it or just to catch it clean.
Brandon seems way more comfortable and has done it for a lot longer. Obviously, Boston Scott's done a good job at that as well, but he didn't do it at all in college. So, again, the comfort level. Hey, play number 5, lost without Drew. Is it wrong to think that all will be right in the world when Drew Brees comes back in this third preseason game, that what's happening now that's bad is going to be right again?
After 13 years, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
And that's Drew and Sean in this offense, particularly with the passing game. I think that they get the benefit of the doubt with him being able to step in, and whether it's getting guys lined up, but making sure that guys understand and know exactly what concept they're trying to run as far as routes are concerned. I mean, you have to remember, this is an offense that he has been in, and he kind of knows it inside out. And so if guys aren't lined up in the correct position or not motioning or shifting like they need to be, he should be able to get them in the correct spot.
And I'm going to say they would be up 14-0 in that game if Drew Brees is on the field. The way that offensive line performed, as well as they were running the ball, and then Drew Brees' ability to finish drives, to keep them on the field on third downs, to keep drives alive, I think you hit it on. You nailed it, Juan. I mean, all is right if Brees is in that game.
How many series does he play in the next game?
He may not play any. And the only reason I say that is because they'll have a couple days of practice against the Chargers. So he may play one at best, but I don't look for him to play a half like some of the other starters will.
I would agree. I don't think you see him in there past the first quarter, 1, 2, maybe 3 drives. But like you said, this is the whole reason that you do these joint practices, so you get those competitive reps in a controlled environment where he's not going to the ground.
Fans say, get him on the field. Let's see what we got offensively. We get that. All right, coming up, the NFL has new rules for player safety. Find out how Sean Payton is preparing his team for the changes. And we'll answer your questions, in particular, what to do with rookies J.T. Barrett and Marcus Davenport. We're just getting started. Stay with us.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
All right, welcome back in. There's something we want to bring your attention to, something you've probably already noticed. The referees are not swallowing the whistle this year, at least not in the preseason. The one rule change is trying to change the way players play the game, the lowering the helmet rule. It was on display in Friday's game when Arizona's Vontarius Dora was flagged on this hit on Jonathan Williams in the second quarter. Guys, tell me, how has the NFL gotten this rule correct?
I understand player safety, and that's what they're trying to clean up. They want players to be able to safe. They want you not to use your helmet as a weapon. It's always been taught where you use, you want to hit them square with your face mask in the chest. It's going to be a hard change for a lot of these players, regardless if they're a veteran and or a rookie. It's still going to be hard.
Yeah, I think if you want to say they got it right, they're trying to help further define what the illegal hit is and try and make it safer for the players, but it is very tough. It's a tough adjustment, and like Deuce mentioned, I think there are guys across the league that are going to have an issue with it, and it's going to take some adjustment. It may not come very quickly either.
You're asking guys to change the way they've been taught to wrap up a guy and tackle him on the ground, but I want to tell you how the rule officially reads in the NFL bylaws. It is a foul if a player lowers his head to initiate and make contact with his helmet against an opponent. Contact does not have to be to an opponent's head or neck area. And here's what Sean Payton said about all these new rules to protect players when he first saw the penalties popping up in the preseason.
It's a little bit easier for our group because I'm on the competition committee. And so sitting in on those meetings in Florida and understanding the goal of not just the helmet rule, but the goal of any of these points of emphasis or the kickoff the catch. You have obviously a much clearer picture as to the specifics because you sat in a room. We spent a day on some of these topics. So it's great to have the officials here. These guys do a great job. They too are working to get ready for the season. You talk to them and, they need that work and the reps. And I think it's a valuable time for our team to ask questions out here.
So I have to ask you guys this question. How has the NFL gotten this rule wrong, or at least the implementation of it? Is there too much of a gray area?
I think it's when you look at some of these plays, it's going to be subjective. It was already a subjective call to make in the first place, but I think now you've given officials that green light to throw the flag even more. I think one of the few positives you can take out of all of that we've seen right now is that, one, officials are getting used to calling it, and now they can go back and look at their own tape and look at their own calls and see, okay, maybe I shouldn't have thrown it in this situation, maybe I should have. And like Peyton mentioned, the players get to see it a little bit more. So if they're throwing the flag a little more in the preseason, I'm okay with that because it's the preseason, but you'd like to see, like Peyton mentioned, an understanding on both sides, the player and an official. By the time we get to week one, I don't know if we're going to see that maybe throughout the full season.
The one thing that I want to see is just, and it's hard because it is subjective, is to have a uniform call. I mean, as far as to be able to tackle, yes, this tackle is illegal. There are numerous times where they can call this penalty on short yardage, on goal line, even a quarterback sneak. They should be able to call it, and very rarely are we seeing offensive players getting called on this penalty, even though they are subject to the same rule as the defender.
As a running back, you always put that head down to plow forward. All right, let's get to some of the questions. We've got a bunch tonight, beginning with the backup quarterbacks. This is submitted on the Final Play app using the Final Word feature from Kedrick in Denham Springs. He asked, how real is J.T. Barrett's chances of making this team? He seems to be a better quarterback than the other two combined, and by other two, he means the other two backups, and obviously Savage and Taysom Hill. Deuce, your thoughts on J.T. Barrett making this team?
It's going to be very tough. And I say that just because maybe the games don't give the full picture. I mean, because what you see in practice is you see a young man that struggles. And when I say struggles, it's just having the complete command of the offense. He's a second late at times, almost a full second for the window that's really there in the NFL. I think that he has a good chance of being a good prospect. Practice squad, 100%. Maybe next year he's ready to take that next step, but I just don't think that he's ready currently.
Yeah, I think when you look at JT, you see a guy who's, like Deuce has mentioned, made some poor decisions, made some late throws, and he doesn't really have the arm talent to make up for some of those bad decisions either. You've got to take those practices into account, obviously, almost more than the game sometimes, because that's where you're getting a lot of these reps, and we haven't seen it from JT Barrett out there. And at the end of the day, you've got to be a little more accurate. You've got to have a little bit more arm talent, I think, than what he does, at least to make this team right away.
All right, another question comes from Corey Singletary from Bossier City. He wants to know, do you think Marcus Davenport can learn quick enough to make an impact this year? We think he'll play. Sean Payton's saying he's going to play in the game in Los Angeles against the Chargers. Can he make an impact quick enough, Chris?
I think he can. I think he's, from everything we've heard and from what Coach Payton has said, he's done excellent in the meetings. Mentally, he's doing well enough from what they can see off the field, but as far as what we've seen in practice, it's hard to be a gamer when you're a rookie, and I think you have to see those reps and perform those reps and have success with those reps in order to make an impact, if you want to make an impact right away.
Depends on what your expectations are as far as an impact is concerned. Will he contribute? Yes. Will he be a guy that can be disruptive? Yes. Will he be a 10-sack guy? I don't think so. And I think that's only going to come with time. He has to get reps. He has to be able to go out there and practice and be able to perform and be able to create counter moves. That's one of the biggest things. At times he plays too high. So he's not going to get better at doing those things until he gets in the actual game.
A bunch of questions tonight coming up. Did the Saints get it right by drafting Marcus Davenport? Or should they have gone with a quarterback to be groomed behind Drew Brees? We'll debate your questions next.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
And we're back once again, and we're going to keep on getting back to your questions. This one comes from Aaron Brown down in Thibodaux, asking the question, will the Saints regret moving up in the draft to get Marcus Davenport and not Lamar Jackson, who's looked pretty good in the preseason as well? I
don't think they'll regret it. I mean, because you have to understand, this is a 5-year plan for them. For the last 2 years, they have tried to find a complementary piece. I know they signed Alex Okafor, but they've tried to find a complementary piece to Cam Jordan. They have to be able to put pressure on the quarterback outside of Cam Jordan, and hopefully Marcus Davenport develops into that individual.
In the case of getting Lamar Jackson as your alternative, I say they don't regret that. In the case of trading away next year's first, possibly, because to me, and I may be wrong, but it felt like Marcus Davenport was the ultimate win-now draft pick with what you gave up to get him. And if he doesn't make an impact this year, you might still be okay with Okafor and Trey Hendrickson, but you have Davenport and you don't have next year's first, and did you need him or did you need next year's first more? That's a debate for another day, I think. That would be the only regret, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Peyton made the argument when they moved up to get him that, if we get to where we want to be this season, that first-round pick would have been 28, 29, 30 anyway. So essentially it's like a second-round pick, so you don't really worry about losing that. Another question, this one from Joe in Nolans, echoing a lot of people's question. Do you think Devereaux Lawrence will be in the rotation at the end of the day?
I'm not sold that Devereaux Lawrence is going to make the final 53.
Okay.
I mean, I think that he has to continue to show improvement and make plays in the backfield, come up with sacks. But right now, I probably still have one of the veteran D linemen that were on the team last year as far as number 4 is concerned. I feel really good about the top 3 defensive tackles that you have, but, I'm still not 100% sold that he is going to be on the final 53.
I would agree with Deuce in that regard. It's kind of like the case of Al Muhammad last year. We saw him make some plays, but I'm not sure if he was ever at that level to warrant making an impact and what would be expected of Devereaux if he were to make the team over some of those other guys.
Does he clear waivers, though? He's had a pretty good preseason.
He's had a really, really good preseason. And it may come down to a numbers matchup as well, as far as them being able to say, hey, look, this guy's done enough. We're going to keep him. He may get a red shirt early on. And when I say that, maybe not one of the 46 that dresses on Sunday. So it'll all come down to numbers as far as throughout the roster, whether or not they keep him and or keep an additional defensive lineman where they carry 5.
The biggest fear for Sean Payton is always not keeping him here and him just exploding and playing well someplace else, which could always happen. Still to come, has Sean Payton flipped the switch on his demeanor with his team? We'll show you the signs that he might be pushing some different buttons. That's next.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
Well, let's not kid ourselves here, and I say this with all due respect. There's a number of guys that aren't playing snaps, but at some point, all right, that we've still got to evaluate the individual players, all right?
And since camp began back on July 25th, it seemed like we were dealing with a bit of a different sort of Sean Payton than in years past. He seemed more relaxed and more sure of his team. But there seems to be a bit of a shift right now. Following another subpar performance against the Cardinals, Payton's bothered by mistakes, especially from his veteran players. So I ask you guys, is Sean Payton back to normal, what we've always been used to seeing? Low on edge.
Yeah, I think he's back to normal as far as on edge, but, also understanding and knowing that he has a pretty good team. I think that's probably the most important thing, but he can't let them buy into being complacent. Mm-hmm. Once they buy into being complacent, then that's when they're going to get beat. And he wants them to understand that they have to go out and execute, basically on a day in and day out effort.
The complacency part was what we were concerned about, and that most of the players that contribute to this team last year, first-year players, all they know is winning.
Yeah, all they know is winning, but I think Payton's done a good job of bringing them back down to earth, and I think that's what he's doing right now. The standard has to be a lot higher. The bar has to be set higher because, as Boston Scott said after the game, they want to win championships. They don't want to just be a winning team. They want to be a championship team, and I think that's what Payton is trying to instill right now. And when you hear about the mistakes of receivers being in the wrong alignment and Ted Ginn running a wrong route or two, that's what you can't have, and I think that's what Payton's trying to drive home right now.
Okay, let's get you back to the questions, and it's coaching A coaching question from Leo and Port Fourchon. With another successful season, which coaches stand a chance of being pillaged from our staff? When you win, other teams see that, and they want to get those coaches to help them win.
I think a few coaches will have the opportunity to move on, particularly if they're successful. Dennis Allen being one of them. You know, we knew the opportunity he had moving to defensive coordinator with the Broncos and then being the head coach at the Raiders. Another guy, I think Dan Campbell will get another opportunity. He was an intern down in Miami. He's interviewed for the Indianapolis coach job this past offseason. Aaron Glenn was a candidate for the defensive coordinator job for the New England Patriots. And so I think those three in particular, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. You talk about a Pete Carmichael. I don't know if he wants that head job, but his name has been thrown around a few times. So there's a couple guys. Joe Lombardi is another one. You know, he's been offensive coordinator for Detroit. So there's a couple guys on that staff that could have some opportunities.
I'm going to skip to the last question for you, Chris. First cuts is September 1st. Things have changed over the last 2 years. Prior to a year ago, it was 3 different cuts. How do you think a player's mentality changes now, knowing you've got one date to look forward to?
I think it makes you a little bit more relaxed, but that's dangerous because you should never be relaxed if you're on the bubble like that. I do think it helps for some of those guys that would be in that first cut, especially when you're not going to play any starters in that 4th preseason game. It definitely gives them another chance to change a mind or two, but it's tough.
All right, be sure to pull up your Final Play app to check out Chris Higgins. That guy right there has got an Extra Point blog. With fantasy drafts right around the corner, Chris has all you need to know to win that fantasy league. And we appreciate you spending your part of Monday night with us. For Deuce and Chris and all of us here at Fox 8, I'm Juan Kincaid. Thanks for watching. Our next newscast, 4:30 in the morning. Have a great night.
From Fox 8 Sports, this has been the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers, home of the best-selling truck 41 years straight, and the 2018 Nissan Titan, backed by America's best limited truck warranty.